The boardroom smelled like power. Leather chairs, fresh espresso, cologne that cost more per ounce than Marcus Hayes earned in a day. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Philadelphia's skyline in October morning light, reflecting off polished mahogany where Catherine Lockwood presided like royalty over 28 executives and investors. Their tablets glowed with acquisition projections worth $4.2 billion. Enough to reshape the defense contracting landscape for a decade. Marcus stood near the service panel embedded behind a decorative wall, invisible by design. Navy work shirt faded from 1,000 washes, utility belt riding low on his hips, contractor badge clipped where power never looked. He'd been replacing a faulty fiber relay when the anomaly flickered across his diagnostic tablet. A ripple in outbound traffic, small and precise, hidden inside legitimate transfer packets. Not loud enough for standard alerts, but deliberate. The kind of pattern that separated amateurs from professionals. He felt it the way some men sense weather shifting before a storm arrives. Across town, his daughter Emma sat in a third-grade classroom with a rescue inhaler tucked in her backpack. The specialist appointment was 2 weeks out. Lockwood's healthcare partnership funded the clinic that subsidized her treatment, $4,600 monthly for medication that kept her lungs functioning. If this acquisition collapsed, or worse, if a breach destroyed investor confidence, the layoffs would cascade from the bottom. Contractors first, always. The morning had started at 6:15 with Marcus scrambling eggs while Emma coughed into a dish towel, the wet rattling sound that preceded her using the inhaler. She'd smiled through it, 9 years old and already practiced at pretending strength came easy. "I'm okay, Dad. Strong like you said." He'd knelt beside her chair, steadying her small shoulders. "Being strong doesn't mean you don't need help, sweetheart." The school nurse had reminded him again when he dropped Emma off. Insurance covered the new prescription, thank God, but only because Lockwood maintained their medical partnerships. One policy shift and families like his would drown. Marcus had nodded, squeezed Emma's hand twice, their signal for "I love you," and driven to the office tower where people like him use service elevators. Now he stood in the periphery of a meeting that determined his daughter's survival, watching data bleed from systems he'd been hired to maintain. The outbound packets surged again, 380 megabytes per minute routing through an unregistered node. He traced the pathway on his tablet, following the encryption handshake through layers most technicians wouldn't recognize. Military-grade protocol, the kind he'd seen a decade ago when he wore a different uniform and carried clearances that made lawyers nervous. The acquisition presentation droned on behind him. Charts showing growth forecasts, applause waiting to happen. Catherine Lockwood's voice cut through the murmur with surgical precision. Every syllable calculated for maximum impact. She wore an ivory suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, hair pulled back severe enough to make subordinates flinch, power distilled into human form. Marcus had learned long ago that panic was loud, competence was quiet. He glanced at his phone, 6:42 a.m., still early enough that most of Lockwood's 14,000 employees hadn't clocked in yet. The breach had started at 11:42 yesterday, he realized now, reviewing the traffic logs. 20 hours of continuous siphoning, timed perfectly to the negotiation milestones. Whoever built this understood infrastructure from the inside. They knew when to hide and when to strike. His jaw tightened. The relay panel behind him hummed with fiber optic data traveling at light speed, carrying contracts and proprietary research that competitors would kill to access. And someone was draining it in real time, disguised as routine backup transfers to a server in Luxembourg. Marcus stepped forward when the next applause cycle faded. The door's soft hiss barely registered over conversation, but heads turned anyway. Maintenance interrupting executive business violated unspoken hierarchies. Catherine's expression hardened before he opened his mouth. "Ma'am." His voice stayed level, eyes fixed on the chairman. "There's irregular outbound traffic routing through the internal board node. It needs to stop now. Silence fell in fractured pieces. A few executives blinked, confused by the interruption. One investor leaned back, irritated by the delay. Catherine Lockwood's gaze traveled from his worn boots to the grease stain on his sleeve, assessing and dismissing in the same motion. "Excuse me? There's a live siphon running through your secure infrastructure." Marcus kept his tone even, the way he used to brief commanding officers who didn't want bad news. "If it isn't contained, you're about to lose more than this deal." A sharp laugh cut across the table. "Is this some kind of joke?" A director in a $3,000 suit shook his head, already reaching for his phone to complain about lax security protocols. Catherine's voice dropped 10 degrees. "This meeting is restricted. You repair wiring. That is the extent of your authority here." Marcus didn't flinch. Authority never changed physics or code. "With respect, ma'am, a breach doesn't care about org charts." Murmur rolled through the room. Offense, disbelief, the kind of collective dismissal that comes easy when someone challenges the natural order. Catherine pressed a discreet button beneath the table, her expression settling into the cold patience of someone who'd fired better men for less. "Security, remove him." Two uniformed guards entered almost instantly, their presence heavy against the glass walls. Investors watched with thin smiles, some already shaking their heads. Marcus could feel the weight of their assumptions pressing down like atmospheric pressure. Maintenance, labor, replaceable. The story wrote itself in their minds. Overeager contractor creating drama to feel important, wasting everyone's time with technical gibberish nobody understood. One guard reached for his arm, grip firm but not brutal, protocol for escorting problems out quietly. That was when the presentation screen flickered. Just once, subtle and quick, but Marcus's eyes locked onto the upper corner where a data transfer icon blinked and vanished. There, confirmation settling into his chest like a key turning in a lock. He'd learned to trust his instincts in rooms far less polished and far more dangerous than this one, places where hesitation measured the gap between living and dying. "Ma'am?" He didn't resist the guard, but didn't move either, voice dropping to something almost gentle. "The breach is originating from inside this room." A few executives shifted uncomfortably. Catherine's patience snapped audibly. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No." Marcus met her eyes without challenge, without submission. "You're being robbed." A ripple of uneasy laughter tried and failed to form. The presentation screen flickered again, longer this time, and the IT director in the far corner frowned at his console, confusion dawning too late. Marcus turned his gaze deliberately along the table, studying micro-reactions the way he used to read enemy positions from satellite feeds. Breathing patterns, eye contact, the small physical tells that separated guilt from innocence. Richard Caldwell sat halfway down the table, immaculate suit pressed sharp enough to cut, gold cufflinks shaped like eagles catching the light, his tablet screen angled away just slightly too far, positioned for privacy in a room that demanded transparency. Outbound packets surged again. Marcus could track them now without his diagnostic tool, pattern recognition honed over years of hunting threats that hid in plain sight. The guard tightened his grip. "Sir, we need you to step out." Marcus exhaled slowly. He could walk away right now, keep his job a little longer, pretend he hadn't seen what he'd seen. Let the breach continue, let the company collapse, let 14,000 families, including his own, slide into unemployment and medical debt. Stay invisible. Stay safe. The way he'd stayed quiet for 10 years, choosing silence over risk because Emma needed stability more than the world needed another whistleblower. But Emma's inhaler flashed in his mind, blue plastic worn smooth from her small hands, the sound of her breathing ragged in the night when attacks came hard. The clinic that kept her alive depended on this company staying solvent. If Lockwood Industries failed, the healthcare partnerships would dissolve first. Contractors would lose coverage before executives missed a single premium payment. He'd chosen silence once before, in a different country under a different flag, and a man named Cooper had died because Marcus trusted the wrong information. He still saw Cooper's face some nights, blood pooling on Berlin concrete, eyes asking the question Marcus couldn't answer. Why didn't you speak up sooner? His wife's voice echoed across 5 years of grief. Don't let fear stop you from doing what's right. She'd said that 3 days before the cancer took her, hand squeezing his with what little strength remained. Emma needs a father who stands up, not one who hides. Marcus met Catherine Lockwood's eyes once more, then shifted his focus to the guards. His voice came out soft but carried to every corner of the room. Security, remove him. He didn't point, didn't need to. His gaze settled on Richard Caldwell without blinking, steady as a laser designator painting a target. The room didn't breathe. For a fraction of a second, no one moved. Executive minds raced to process the reversal. The maintenance worker giving orders to security, inverting the power structure with 3 words delivered like a judge's verdict. Then the screens behind them flickered again, longer this time, and the presentation froze mid-graph. The projected profit curve split into digital static before dissolving into a cascade of code that shouldn't have been visible to anyone outside the IT department. A low murmur spread across the table, subtle at first, then sharp with concern. Richard Caldwell's fingers moved quickly over his tablet, too quickly. The kind of speed that came from muscle memory, not casual browsing. Catherine stood from her chair, palms flat against polished wood. What is happening? In the far corner, David Porter adjusted his glasses, tapping frantically at his console. Sweat dotted his hairline despite the climate-controlled air. We're seeing unauthorized outbound transfers, but the firewall's intact. It's coming from an internal node. Marcus didn't move. The guard still had his arm, but the grip had loosened, uncertainty creeping into training that covered escorting problems, not adjudicating them. I told you. Marcus kept his tone even, no triumph, just fact. Ma'am. Catherine turned on him, control reasserting itself through sheer force of will. You're still here. Because you need me. He held her gaze without challenge, without submission, stating what both of them could see now. The presentation screens dying, the IT director's growing panic, the way Richard Caldwell had gone very still in his chair. A ripple of indignation moved through the board. Investors whispered to one another, some already checking their phones for stock prices, gauging exposure. Panic spread faster than truth. Marcus had seen it before, watching intelligence networks collapse when one thread pulled wrong. Richard cleared his throat, reclaiming composure by increments. This is absurd. His voice carried the practiced authority of someone who'd spent 30 years in boardrooms. The maintenance contractor creates a disturbance and suddenly we have a breach. Perhaps he's the one who triggered it. The accusation hung heavy in recycled air. Several heads turned. Marcus felt the calculation happening. Easier to blame the outsider than accept infiltration from within. Simpler narratives always won in the first minutes of crisis. Marcus's jaw flexed once, but his tone stayed calm. If I wanted access, I wouldn't do it in front of 40 witnesses. Sarah Miller, seated halfway down the table, glanced between them with the sharp intelligence of someone who'd built her career reading subtext. Her brow furrowed as she studied the scrolling data now appearing intermittently on the side display. The timestamps. They started before he entered the room. Richard's expression didn't shift, but his knuckles whitened around the tablet's edge. Microtension, the kind most people missed. Marcus cataloged it automatically, training never fully faded, just waited dormant until circumstances demanded activation. Catherine shot Sarah a warning look, then faced Marcus again. Even if there is an issue, we have professionals for that. You do, Marcus agreed without hesitation. And they're looking in the wrong place. David Porter looked up from his console, glasses reflecting code that scrolled too fast for human reading. It's embedded in legitimate traffic, Whoever did this knows our infrastructure. Silence fell again, heavier this time, the kind that pressed against eardrums and made hearts beat visible in throats. Marcus took one slow step forward, careful and deliberate. The guard hesitated but didn't stop him, instinct warring with protocol. It's piggybacking on the board's secure acquisition channel. Marcus spoke to the room now, not just Catherine. Layered inside the encrypted file transfers. That's why your alerts aren't triggering. How would you possibly know that? Richard snapped, control slipping at the edges. Because I've built it, dismantled it, hunted it across 3 continents and a dozen operations that never made official records. Marcus swallowed the truth, offering something simpler. Pattern recognition. Another surge flashed across the screen. Larger numbers climbing in the corner, data volume increasing like a fever spiking. An investor stood abruptly, chair scraping against marble. Is our proprietary research exposed? David swallowed hard enough to be audible. If this continues, yes. The room fractured into overlapping voices, questions, demands, accusations flying faster than anyone could answer. Catherine's composure began to crack, just slightly. A hairline fracture in the foundation of absolute certainty. She rounded the table, heels clicking sharply against marble, each step measured for maximum effect. Stop it! She ordered Marcus like he was a machine she could command. Whatever stunt you're pulling, stop it now! Marcus almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. Just the weary recognition of people who'd rather believe in elaborate conspiracies than simple theft. I'm not the one stealing from you, ma'am. Richard rose from his seat, adjusting his cufflinks with forced calm. The eagles caught light, small symbols of power that suddenly looked defensive. This is ridiculous. Call the police, remove him, shut down the network. It's too late for shutdown. Marcus said it quietly, the way you'd tell someone their house was already burning. Hard disconnect will corrupt your acquisition files. You'll lose everything. David looked at him sharply, professional recognition cutting through panic. He's right. If we pull the plug now, 6 months of negotiation data gets destroyed. That admission shifted the air. Proof from someone with credentials validating the contractor's claim. Sarah leaned forward, voice steady despite the chaos. If it's internal, then someone in this room authorized the channel. Richard's voice sharpened, edges showing through the polish. Are you suggesting? I'm stating facts, Sarah replied, more confident now. Only board members have that level of access. Marcus watched the micro-expressions again, the way he used to watch insurgents in marketplace crowds, separating nervous civilians from concealed threats. Richard's breathing had changed, faster, shallower. His tablet screen glowed with an open background application, faint but visible from the angle Marcus stood. There, a mirrored server handshake, the digital equivalent of an open safe behind a closed door. Marcus stepped closer to the display wall, voice dropping to something that demanded attention without raising volume. Project the internal node activity. Catherine bristled. You don't give instructions here. No. He met her eyes fully. But I can stop this. The numbers climbed again. Data bleeding out in real time. Quantifiable theft measured in gigabytes. David hesitated only a moment before typing rapidly. Professional instinct overriding hierarchy. A secondary screen lit up. Raw traffic logs cascading downward in code that looked like the Matrix to most people in the room, but read clear as highway signs to Marcus. Gasps filled the boardroom. Even people who didn't understand the technical details could see the highlighted line blinking angry red, a digital accusation pointing directly at its source. Source: Terminal 9. Every head turned slowly, following the breadcrumb trail to its inevitable conclusion. Terminal 9 sat directly in front of Richard Caldwell. The eagle cufflinks caught light as his hand tightened, knuckles going white against expensive fabric. For the first time since the meeting began, uncertainty cracked through Catherine's authority. Richard? The question emerged careful, testing weight before applying pressure. He laughed, forced and hollow, the sound of someone buying time to construct a defense. This proves nothing. It could be spoofed. Anyone with basic technical knowledge could fake terminal identification. Marcus's voice dropped lower, steady as stone. It's not spoofed. Catherine demanded proof without asking, her silence a command. How can you be sure? Sarah asked what everyone needed answered. Marcus met Catherine's eyes again, and this time there was no humility in it, no deference to rank or position. Just the flat certainty of someone who'd spent years in rooms where lies cost lives. Because I've seen this architecture before. The room stilled around him. Conversation died. Even the data scrolling on screens seemed to pause, waiting for explanation that never came. Marcus didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The statement hung there, weighted with implications that shifted how people saw him. Not maintenance anymore, but something else. Something with history that extended beyond fiber optic cables and contractor badges. Richard's mask slipped just slightly. Enough. That doesn't mean... Marcus exhaled once, preparing to do what he'd avoided for 10 years. The encryption keys cycling every 12 seconds. That's a military adaptation. The staggered data bursts are designed to avoid volumetric detection, and the access origin... He tapped the highlighted log line with one finger. Terminal 9, with biometric authentication that can't be cloned. Catherine's gaze snapped back to him. Biometric? Marcus nodded once. The system logs thumbprint heat variance when authentication occurs. Micro-temperature differences, it's subtle, but it's there in the metadata. David's eyes widened behind his glasses. We never told contractors about that feature. You didn't. Marcus said it evenly without pride or apology. Just another fact in a room drowning in them. The city skyline glinted behind them, glass reflecting October sunlight like indifferent witnesses. In that gleaming room of privilege and power, the maintenance tech stood steady while tailored suits shifted in discomfort, recalculating assumptions that had seemed solid 30 minutes ago. Richard's composure fractured at the edges, calm dissolving into something rawer. This is absurd. Even if my terminal shows activity, it proves nothing. Anyone could have accessed it while I stepped away. Marcus finally looked at him directly, gaze level and unblinking. Not during a live board meeting. Your terminal's been active the entire time. The logs show continuous interaction. Typing patterns, mouse movements, the kind of engagement that requires physical presence. Richard's jaw tightened. Are you accusing me? I'm stating what the data shows. The numbers in the corner ticked higher again. Another burst, larger than before. David went pale, fingers flying across his keyboard. They're accelerating. Whoever's on the other end knows something's wrong. Panic rippled outward through the boardroom. Whispers escalating to urgent conversation, chair legs scraping, the faint buzz of phones lighting up with internal alerts as word spread through the building. Something was very wrong on the executive floor. Catherine straightened, authority clawing its way back into her posture through sheer force of will. Stop it! The command snapped out like a physical blow. If you know how to contain this, do it now. For a fraction of a second, something flickered behind Marcus's eyes. A memory. Dark rooms lit by single monitors, the weight of national secrets resting on his shoulders. Lives measured in keystrokes and whether he made the right call fast enough. He'd walked away from that world, traded field operations for fiber optic repairs because Emma needed a father who came home at night. Not a ghost who disappeared for months on classified missions. But some skills never faded, just waited. I can't just shut it down. Marcus kept his voice level, explaining reality without cushioning it. If I interrupt mid-cycle, you'll corrupt your acquisition data and alert the external receiver. They'll wipe their endpoint before we can trace it. Everything you need for prosecution disappears. Sarah looked at him sharply. So what do we do? He moved toward the infrastructure panel near the wall. the one he'd been repairing before this began, knelt smoothly, unsnapping the cover with practiced ease. Inside, fiber lines glowed faintly, threads of light carrying fortunes and futures at speeds that made human reaction time irrelevant. "Is he seriously touching our core infrastructure?" an investor muttered, loud enough to carry. Catherine hesitated, calculation visible in her eyes. Let him work or reassert control. Trust the contractor or default to protocol. The numbers kept climbing on the display. Every second of indecision cost data, leverage, potentially the entire acquisition. She didn't stop him. Marcus connected his diagnostic tablet, fingers moving with calm precision. The faint hum of data pulsed through the panel like a heartbeat, rhythm constant despite the chaos bleeding through it. He traced pathways invisible to anyone without his particular training, following the siphon through layers of legitimate traffic to find the hidden tunnel carved beneath. Richard's breathing had grown shallower, audible in the silence. "You're making a mistake. If you miscalculate, you'll destroy this company." Marcus glanced up at him, expression unreadable. "If I do nothing, you will." David stepped closer, drawn by professional instinct despite his fear. "What are you doing?" "Mapping the outbound tunnel." Marcus's hands never stopped moving, routing diagnostic queries through the fiber network. "There's a hidden relay embedded 2 layers deep. It's bouncing through a shell server before exiting to Luxembourg." "How can you see that?" Sarah asked, genuine curiosity cutting through tension. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he rerouted a visual feed to the main display, overriding the frozen presentation. The screen shifted from chaotic logs to a structured network map. Clean lines branching outward like arterial systems, one path glowing brighter than the rest. More gasps filled the room. The visualization made it real, turned abstract threat into something everyone could understand. A glowing highway of stolen data pulsing in real time. "There," Marcus pointed without looking up from his work. "That node doesn't belong to any registered system in your infrastructure." Richard took a subtle step backward. Small movement, but Marcus tracked it peripherally. Flight response beginning to override fight. Catherine's eyes followed the glowing path, understanding crystallizing. "Trace it." "I am." Seconds stretched. Sweat beaded at Richard's temple despite the controlled temperature. The glowing path extended on the display, branching through proxy servers and encrypted tunnels, following a trail that led inevitably to its source. When it resolved, the room went silent. The offshore holding company appeared on screen, registration details scrolling past. Sarah read the name aloud, voice cutting through shock. "Meridian Strategic Holdings, incorporated in the Cayman Islands 3 months ago." 3 months. The same week acquisition negotiations began. Sarah's eyes widened with the math, connections forming visible in her expression. Richard's face drained of color. Not the flush of anger or indignation, but genuine fear breaking through trained composure. Marcus stood slowly, closing the infrastructure panel behind him with the same care he'd opened it. "You asked how I can be sure." His voice carried now, filling the space without volume. "Because I helped design systems like this. I used to hunt breaches exactly like this, for people who didn't advertise their work." The weight of that statement settled across the boardroom like snowfall. Silent, complete, changing the landscape. Catherine stared at him, something dawning in her expression that looked like recognition. Not of him specifically, but of the gap between what she'd assumed and what stood before her. "Who are you?" The question emerged quieter than her previous commands, genuine curiosity replacing authority. Marcus met her gaze fully this time, no deference left in the angle of his shoulders. "Someone who doesn't steal from his own people, ma'am." Security shifted uneasily near the door, no longer certain who represented the threat. Richard opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "This is circumstantial. You can't—" Marcus turned toward the guards, voice calm and unwavering, delivering the words that would flip the entire morning on its axis. "Security, remove him." This time no one laughed. The guards didn't move immediately, but they didn't hesitate either. Their eyes flicked to Catherine Lockwood, waiting for the authority that usually came without question. For the first time since the meeting began, she didn't issue an order. Just stood there, staring at the network map still glowing on the screens, at Richard Caldwell, whose expensive suit suddenly looked like costume jewelry, at the contractor whose name she probably didn't know an hour ago. Richard's voice cracked through the silence. "You can't be serious." Catherine's expression hardened into something colder than her earlier dismissal. This wasn't arrogance now. This was calculation. Survival instinct recognizing which lifeboat to board when the ship started sinking. She looked at the guards and gave a single nod. They moved then, crossing the boardroom with professional efficiency. Richard backed against the table, hands raised in reflexive defense, words tumbling out faster. "This is a setup, a manipulation. He's controlling the display somehow. You're making a catastrophic mistake." But his voice carried the hollow ring of someone who knew the game was over, just couldn't stop playing yet. The guards took his arms with the same firm politeness they'd used on Marcus minutes earlier, and the reversal felt cosmic. Poetic justice delivered in real time, witnessed by everyone who'd watched the maintenance worker get dismissed as irrelevant. As they led Richard past Marcus, their shoulders nearly brushed. Close enough that Marcus could smell expensive cologne and fear sweat mixing underneath. Richard leaned in, voice dropping to a hiss meant only for him. "You have no idea what you've started." Marcus didn't blink. "I finished it." The doors closed behind Richard Caldwell with a soft, final click. The network map faded from red to stable amber. Contained but not eliminated, the threat boxed in for now. In the sudden quiet, reality pressed against every person in the room. What had just happened, what it meant, how close they'd come to losing everything. Catherine turned slowly toward the man she'd ordered removed only minutes earlier. The power dynamic had shifted and everyone knew it. The contractor who fixed cables had just saved $4.2 billion and possibly the entire company, had exposed a board member as a thief, had demonstrated capabilities that raised questions about what else he might know, might see, might be capable of doing. She studied him with new eyes, not assessment this time, recognition. Marcus stood near the infrastructure panel, shoulders squared but relaxed, like he'd just finished routine maintenance instead of dismantling a sophisticated breach in front of 40 witnesses. The diagnostic tablet hung from his belt, innocuous as a hammer. His work shirt still bore the grease stain. Nothing about his appearance had changed. Everything about how people saw him had transformed completely. Catherine opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Found herself without script for a situation that didn't exist in any boardroom manual. Finally settled on the simplest question, the one that mattered most. "Who are you?" Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, turned it so she could see the lock screen, a photo of a little girl with dark hair and bright eyes holding a blue inhaler like a trophy, grinning at the camera with the unself-conscious joy of childhood. Someone who can't afford to lose his daughter's health care. The answer landed different than anything else that morning. No technical jargon, no power plays, just the simple truth that cut through everything. This man had risked his job, his safety, his invisibility because staying silent would cost him the one thing that mattered more than comfort or security. Sarah Miller broke the silence first, voice gentle. "What's her name?" "Emma. She's 9, has asthma that requires medication most people couldn't afford without insurance." Marcus slipped the phone back in his pocket. "Your healthcare partnership with St. Gabriel's Clinic keeps her breathing. If this acquisition failed, that partnership would have been first on the chopping block when you started cutting costs." An investor shifted uncomfortably. Numbers on spreadsheets had faces now. Medical coverage wasn't abstract policy anymore. David Porter cleared his throat, professional instinct reasserting itself. "We need to secure all the evidence. If Richard was compromised, we'll need everything for law enforcement. Already done. Marcus gestured to his tablet. I mirrored the traffic logs to 3 separate backup locations while I was mapping the breach. Timestamps, biometric data, the complete pathway to Luxembourg, nothing he can delete remotely. Catherine blinked. You were documenting evidence while explaining what was happening? Multitasking. Marcus said it without pride, just fact. Sarah laughed once, sharp and surprised. Who are you really? Marcus met her eyes, saw genuine curiosity there instead of suspicion. Considered how much truth to offer, how far to pull back the curtain on a decade he'd spent trying to forget. Settled on the bare minimum. Someone who used to do this professionally, before I had other priorities. The implications hung there. Invitation for questions he wouldn't answer. Catherine absorbed this, mental gears visible in her expression. Recalculating everything from the past hour, fitting pieces together into a picture that made sense retroactively but defied all her assumptions about who mattered and who didn't. David's console beeped urgently. He checked it, face paling again. There's another account, a ghost credential created 3 months ago. He stopped, swallowed hard. It's registered under the name M. Hayes Security Consulting. The room froze. Every eye turned to Marcus. Catherine's expression shifted from recognition back to suspicion, the brief alliance cracking under new evidence. Sarah's curiosity hardened into wariness. Even the guards near the door tensed, hands drifting toward equipment. David projected the account details onto the main screen. Registration date matched the acquisition timeline exactly. Full administrative access to core systems, authorization token embedded with coding signatures that looked eerily familiar to anyone who'd just watched Marcus work. Catherine stood very still, voice dropping to something dangerous. Explain that. Marcus stared at the screen, genuinely surprised for the first time that morning. Not the reaction of someone caught, but someone seeing a trap they hadn't anticipated. His mind raced through possibilities, parsing the evidence with the same analytical precision he'd used to map the breach. The registration date, the access level, the name that wasn't quite right, M. Hayes instead of Marcus Hayes, close enough to implicate but different enough to raise questions. And the authorization signature, coded in a style that resembled his work but with subtle variations. Timing intervals off by 0.3 seconds. Encryption handshake using protocols he'd retired 5 years ago, before Emma was born and his priorities shifted from national security to school pickup schedules. Someone had cloned his methodology, built a perfect frame waiting for exactly this moment. That's not mine. He said it simply, no defensiveness, just stating fact. It has your name. Catherine's voice carried the weight of someone who wanted to believe but couldn't afford mistakes. It has a name similar to mine, Marcus corrected gently, and code that mimics my old style. But check the metadata. The timing patterns are wrong. I don't work that way anymore. Sarah leaned forward, studying the screen with sharp focus. He has a point. If Marcus created this account, why use his own name? Why leave such an obvious trail? Unless he panicked, an investor suggested. Realized the scheme was falling apart and tried to expose Caldwell first, shift blame before anyone looked closer. Marcus didn't argue, just waited, the way he used to wait in interrogation rooms on the other side of the table, letting suspects talk themselves into corners while he stayed slant. Panic made people defensive. Innocence could afford patience. Catherine watched him, reading body language with the same instinct that had built her career. She'd spent decades in boardrooms identifying liars, separating performance from truth. Marcus stood relaxed, no tension in his shoulders, no micro-expressions of someone preparing to run or fight. He looked tired, not guilty, just exhausted by the inevitability of old shadows catching up. You said you've seen this architecture before. Catherine spoke slowly, testing each word. You said you used to hunt breaches professionally. What exactly did you do before you worked here? Marcus considered the question. Considered Emma waiting at school, considered the life he'd built in careful obscurity, considered whether truth would protect or destroy what little stability remained. His wife's voice echoed again across 5 years. Don't let fear stop you from doing what's right. I was NSA, Signals Intelligence. Spent 10 years tracking cyber infiltration and building counter protocols. The words came out steady, matter of fact. I left in 2014, came here because the work was simple and the health insurance was comprehensive and I could be home every night for my daughter. The room absorbed this in stages. David's expression shifted to something like awe. Sarah nodded slowly, pieces clicking. Catherine just stared, recalculating every assumption she'd made about the man in the work shirt. And someone from your past is setting you up. Sarah said it like conclusion, not question. Looks that way. Marcus agreed. Catherine moved them to a smaller conference room 3 floors down. Windowless, soundproofed, the kind of space where sensitive conversations happened away from curious eyes. Marcus sat across from her with Sarah and David flanking the table, while 2 lawyers documented everything on tablets that would never leave the building. The ghost account still glowed on the wall display. Evidence that cut both ways depending on whose story you believed. The guards had taken Richard to a holding room pending police arrival. His protests echoed down executive hallways, volume inversely proportional to credibility. But the ghost account complicated everything, turned Marcus from savior to potential co-conspirator in the span of minutes. Catherine folded her hands on the table, posture controlled despite the tremor Marcus caught in her left index finger. Walk me through your NSA work. What specifically did you do? Cyber counterintelligence. Built systems to detect and trace infiltration from hostile actors, state-sponsored mostly, some private contractors. Marcus kept his tone even, reciting facts without emotion. Designed protocols that became standard for securing classified networks. Left when my priorities changed. Why did they change? Sarah asked, gentler than Catherine's interrogation. My wife got sick. Stage 4 lung cancer, never smoked a day in her life. The words still hurt 5 years later, grief compressed into clinical summary. She lasted 8 months, Emma was 4. I couldn't do field deployments and solo parenting simultaneously. David glanced at his console, typing quietly. I'm searching federal databases for your clearance history. Need authorization code. Marcus recited a string of numbers and letters from memory, the kind of credential that didn't expire even when you stopped using it. David's eyes widened at whatever appeared on his screen. He's telling the truth. Marcus Hayes cleared TSSCI until 2014, specialized in signals intelligence and network security architecture. Commendations from... David stopped reading. From some operations I definitely don't have clearance to know about. Catherine absorbed this, mental framework shifting again. So you have the skills to create that ghost account. I have the skills to create something much harder to detect. Marcus leaned forward slightly, no aggression, just emphasis. If I wanted to frame someone or steal data, you'd never find the evidence. It wouldn't have my name attached, wouldn't use outdated protocols, wouldn't leave biometric trails pointing back to me. Sarah nodded slowly. He's right. The ghost account is too obvious, too sloppy for someone with his background. Unless that's intentional misdirection, one of the lawyers interjected. Make it look too obvious so we dismiss it. Marcus didn't argue, just waited while they worked through possibilities because ultimately evidence would speak louder than defense. Catherine studied him with the intensity of someone whose career depended on reading people correctly, sorting truth from performance. You said someone from your past is setting you up. Who? I don't know yet. Marcus kept eye contact. But whoever built that ghost account knows my old methodology well enough to mimic it. That's a short list. David pulled up the account's metadata, scrolling through creation logs and access patterns. The coding signature has some similarities to what we just watched you do, but the timing intervals are different. 0.3-second delays that don't match your current rhythm. I'm slower now, Marcus acknowledged. 10 years away from fieldwork, different muscle memory. Whoever coded this was replicating my old patterns, not accounting for how I've changed. Sarah leaned closer to the display. Can we trace who created the account? Physical location, terminal access? David typed rapidly, following digital breadcrumbs. Created remotely via VPN, routing through nodes in Virginia. He paused, frowning. Near Langley. The room went quiet. Near Langley meant near CIA headquarters, but also near NSA facilities, near the entire intelligence apparatus that Marcus used to inhabit. Geographic proximity that narrowed suspects while expanding implications. Someone with intelligence background. Catherine stated the obvious because sometimes obvious needed saying. Someone who knows you personally. Marcus's jaw tightened, memory surfacing against his will. Berlin, 2012, before everything fell apart. His team had consisted of 4 people running parallel operations across Eastern Europe, tracking weapons sales and data leaks that threatened NATO stability. His mentor, James Thornton, had designed most of their protocols, taught Marcus everything about thinking 3 moves ahead of adversaries who thought they were untouchable. Then Agent Cooper died in an ambush Marcus's bad intel had walked him into. Marcus had trusted a source who turned out to be feeding disinformation, and Cooper paid the price. The after-action investigation went deep, uncovering evidence that Thornton had been protecting personal assets by withholding intelligence that might have prevented the ambush. Marcus had written the report that ended Thornton's career, detailed every inconsistency, every warning sign ignored, every decision that prioritized Thornton's network over team safety. NSA had forced Thornton into retirement, then burned him completely when foreign partners wanted blood for the breach. Last Marcus heard, Thornton had died in 2015 during a follow-up operation gone wrong. But intelligence work bred liars, and dead men sometimes weren't. I had a mentor at NSA, James Thornton. Marcus forced the words out, each syllable weighted with history. Brilliant strategist, taught me most of what I know. But after a mission failure that killed one of our team, I uncovered evidence he'd been compromising operations. Sarah's expression sharpened. What happened to him? Forced retirement, then supposedly killed in 2015. But I never saw a body, never attended a funeral, just heard through channels that he didn't make it. Catherine leaned back, processing. You think he's alive and doing this? I think someone with intimate knowledge of my work is targeting this company specifically. Marcus chose words carefully. And the timing, 3 months ago when acquisition talks started, suggests they knew I worked here. David pulled up employee records, cross-referencing. How would they know? Your background check listed previous employment as federal contractor, nothing specific. Emma's medical records. Marcus felt sick saying it, but logic demanded following threads wherever they led. St. Gabriel's Clinic partners with Lockwood Industries. Insurance claims would show my name, my coverage, which company provided it. Someone monitoring my life would know exactly where I work. Sarah paled. They're using your daughter as leverage. Not direct threats, something subtler and more effective, creating a situation where saving the company meant risking his own exposure, where staying silent meant Emma losing health care. A trap designed by someone who understood Marcus's priorities better than he'd like to admit. Catherine's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, frowned. Police are here for Caldwell. They want to interview you as well. Her eyes met Marcus's. I can stall them if you need time to. No. Marcus stood. Transparency is the only defense I have. If I start hiding, it looks like guilt. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. You should consult counsel before making any statements. I should, but I won't. Marcus headed for the door, then paused. I spent 10 years in a world where truth was classified and lies were currency. I left that behind. Whatever happens next, I'm not going back to operating in shadows. Catherine nodded once, something like respect flickering across her face. I'll send Sarah with you. Witness to your cooperation. Sarah grabbed her tablet, falling in beside Marcus as they walked toward the elevator. The executive floor hummed with controlled chaos. Word had spread about Richard's arrest, about the breach, about the contractor who'd somehow become central to everything. Employees stared as they passed, whispers following like wake behind a boat. You didn't have to volunteer for this, Marcus told Sarah quietly. I know. She pressed the elevator button. But you saved this company. Someone should have your back while you deal with the aftermath. The kindness surprised him. He'd grown used to operating alone, expecting nothing from people who saw him as hired help. Sarah's solidarity felt both foreign and necessary, reminder that not everyone defaulted to suspicion. The elevator descended in silence until Sarah spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? Your wife, when she was dying, did you ever think about just walking away from everything? Starting over somewhere else? Marcus considered the question, memory sharp despite years past. Every day. Emma was so young, watching her mother fade. I wanted to take her somewhere the cancer couldn't follow, like geography could outrun biology. He paused, but running wouldn't have saved anyone, just delayed dealing with reality. Is that why you stayed at NSA as long as you did? Believing you could outrun reality if you worked hard enough? Perceptive, Sarah saw patterns in behavior the way Marcus saw them in data. Maybe, or maybe I just didn't know how to be still, how to sit with grief instead of burying it in missions and classified briefings. The elevator opened onto the ground floor where 2 Philadelphia PD detectives waited with the building's security chief. Marcus recognized the older one, Detective Frank Morrison, a veteran who'd worked corporate crime for 20 years. They'd crossed paths during a previous incident involving stolen prototypes back when Marcus was just another contractor nobody noticed. Morrison's eyebrows rose seeing Marcus approach. Hayes? Didn't expect you at the center of this. Neither did I. Marcus extended his hand. Here to cooperate fully. Sarah Miller, Director of Strategic Planning. Sarah stepped forward, professional and authoritative. Mr. Hayes discovered the breach and helped contain it. He's been completely transparent with our investigation. Morrison gestured toward an empty conference room near reception. Let's talk through what happened. My partner, Detective Chen, will sit in. He caught himself. Actually, Detective Porter, Chen transferred last month. They settled into institutional chairs under fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Morrison set a recorder on the table, recited date and time and names for documentation. Standard procedure Marcus had witnessed from the other side more times than he could count. Walk me through this morning. Morrison clicked his pen, notepad ready. Marcus did. Started with discovering the traffic anomaly at 11:42 the previous day, tracking it overnight, making the decision to interrupt the board meeting. Described the breach architecture, Richard's terminal activity, the biometric evidence that confirmed continuous engagement. Spoke plainly, no technical jargon, just facts arranged in chronological order. Morrison took notes, occasionally asking for clarification. And you have NSA background? 10 years, left in 2014. Why leave? Personal reasons. My wife was dying. I had a daughter who needed stability. Marcus met Morrison's eyes. I wanted work that let me sleep in my own bed every night. Porter, the younger detective, leaned forward. But you maintained the skills, could still recognize sophisticated breaches. Pattern recognition doesn't fade, just shifts application. Morrison tapped his pen against the notepad. Here's what's bothering me. You spot this breach, you interrupt a board meeting, you get security called on you, but instead of backing down, you double down and accuse a board member. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Or both. Marcus allowed a slight smile. But my daughter's health care depends on this company staying solvent. If the acquisition failed because of a breach I could have prevented, I'd be directly responsible for her losing access to medication that costs $4,600 monthly. The detectives exchanged glances. Porter made a note. Morrison shifted topics. Tell me about the ghost account with your name. It's a frame, created by someone who knows my old work well enough to mimic the coding style but not well enough to replicate it perfectly. Marcus explained the timing discrepancies, the outdated protocols, the strategic sloppiness that pointed away from professional competence. Any idea who would do that? Morrison asked. Marcus hesitated. Accusing a potentially dead man of cybercrimes complicated prosecutions and made witnesses look unreliable, but withholding information was worse. I have a theory. James Thornton, my former mentor at NSA. I wrote a report that ended his career after a mission failure in 2012. He was supposedly killed in 2015, but I never confirmed it personally. Porter typed rapidly on a tablet. James Thornton, age 62, retired NSA analyst. Official death certificate filed April 2015, operation-related casualty. He looked up, but no body recovered. Closed casket service attended by 7 people. 7 people at a spy's funeral meant either he had no friends or the friends he had knew better than to show up. Marcus felt cold certainty settling into his bones. He's alive. That's a significant accusation. Morrison's tone stayed neutral, professional. It's a logical conclusion based on evidence. The ghost account, the timing, the intimate knowledge of my methodology and current employment. Marcus counted points on his fingers. Thornton would have means, motive, and opportunity. He'd want revenge for the career I destroyed, and he'd be smart enough to build a frame that implicated me while achieving some larger objective. Sarah spoke up. What larger objective? Why target Lockwood Industries specifically? I don't know yet, Marcus admitted, but it's not random. Everything about this breach is too calculated for opportunistic theft. Morrison closed his notepad. We'll need to interview Caldwell, examine his devices, trace the offshore accounts. You'll need to stay available for follow-up questions. Not planning on going anywhere. Porter stood, collecting his tablet. For what it's worth, your story checks out so far. The biometric evidence is solid, the timeline supports your version. Caldwell's falling apart in holding, already asking for a lawyer and claiming he was coerced. Coerced how? Sarah asked. Won't say yet, but he's scared of something beyond prosecution. Porter exchanged another look with Morrison. Something about photographs and gambling debts. Blackmail. The oldest play in the intelligence handbook. Find someone with secrets, apply pressure, turn them into assets who do your work while believing they have no choice. Thornton had taught Marcus that technique, demonstrated it across a dozen operations. Watching it used against him now felt like getting hit with his own ammunition. Morrison gathered his materials. We'll be in touch. Don't leave Philadelphia without notifying us. After the detectives left, Sarah walked Marcus back toward the elevator, her silence thoughtful rather than uncomfortable. They passed the building's main lobby where employees clustered in small groups, conversations stopping when Marcus appeared. He felt their stares, their speculation. By tomorrow, everyone would know some version of the story. Probably wrong in crucial details, definitely focused on the drama over the reality. You okay? Sarah asked quietly. I've been better. Marcus pressed the elevator call button. But I've definitely been worse. What happens now? I go pick up Emma from school, make her dinner, help with homework, pretend today was normal. The elevator arrived, and then I start figuring out how to prove Thornton is alive and stop whatever he's actually planning. Sarah stepped into the elevator with him. You mean we start figuring it out? Marcus looked at her, surprised. This isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Someone attacked my company, framed a colleague, and used a little girl's health care as leverage. That makes it personal. Her expression hardened into determination. Plus, I'm good at research and strategic analysis. You're going to need help. The offer mattered more than she probably realized. Marcus had spent a decade working alone, trusting only himself, keeping everyone at professional distance. Having someone volunteer to stand beside him felt like learning a language he'd forgotten how to speak. "Thank you." The words came out rougher than intended, emotion he hadn't anticipated. They rode up in silence. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Catherine was waiting with David, both looking grim. "We found something else." David turned his laptop so they could see the screen. "I dug deeper into the offshore company that received the stolen data. Meridian Strategic Holdings, incorporated in the Caymans 3 months ago. But the registration was filed through a law firm in Virginia." "Near Langley," Marcus stated rather than asked. "Near Langley," David confirmed. "And here's where it gets interesting. The law firm also registered 3 other shell companies in the past year, all tied to government contract work. Defense, intelligence, cybersecurity." Catherine crossed her arms. "Someone's building an infrastructure for intelligence brokerage, or preparation for a larger operation." Marcus studied the screen, following connections that formed an increasingly familiar pattern. Thornton isn't just stealing data for profit, he's building leverage against multiple targets. Sarah pulled up additional files on her tablet. "If he's been doing this for a year, Lockwood isn't his only target. We might be one piece of a bigger campaign." David nodded. "I reached out to contacts at other defense contractors, quietly, unofficially. 3 others have had minor security incidents in the past 6 months. Nothing catastrophic, but all involving temporary consultants who appeared and disappeared. Consultants who left back doors." Marcus finished the thought. "So when he needs access later, it's already in place." Catherine's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, expression darkening. "The board wants an emergency session. They're concerned about my judgment allowing a contractor to touch core systems." "Tell them the contractor saved the company." Sarah's voice carried steel. "Tell them without Marcus we'd have lost $4 billion and every proprietary design we've developed." "I will. But they're frightened, and frightened people make stupid decisions." Catherine met Marcus's eyes. "They're going to ask questions about your background, about the ghost account, about whether you're a security risk." Marcus felt the trap closing from multiple directions. Richard in custody but talking to lawyers. Thornton somewhere out there pulling strings. The board nervous about a contractor who knew too much. And underneath it all, Emma depending on the health care that kept her breathing. "I should probably clear out my locker." He said it quietly. "You should probably do nothing of the sort." Catherine's tone sharpened. "I'm not firing the person who saved this company because some board members are uncomfortable with competence they don't understand. You might not have a choice. There's always a choice." She straightened to full height, authority returning. "I'm calling the board session for 6 p.m. You're going to be there. We're going to present the evidence, walk them through exactly what happened, and make it clear that your employment is non-negotiable." Sarah smiled slightly. "This should be entertaining." Marcus checked his watch. 2:47 p.m. School ended at 3:15. He had just enough time to get across town, pick up Emma, maybe grab dinner somewhere she liked before the board meeting that would determine whether their lives stayed stable or collapsed completely. "I need to get my daughter." He looked at Catherine. "I'll be back by 5:30. "Go! Family first." Catherine's expression softened fractionally. "That's why you did this in the first place." Marcus rode the elevator down alone this time, mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. The parking garage smelled like concrete and exhaust, his truck parked in the contractor section far from executive reserved spots. He climbed in, started the engine, and had just shifted into reverse when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but instinct made him check. Thornton had always preferred direct contact when he wanted to make a point. "Hello?" Static. Then a voice he hadn't heard in over a decade. Older, rougher, but unmistakable. "Hello, Marcus. Still solving problems that aren't yours?" Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "Thornton. Surprised? You always were better at tactics than strategy. Saw the immediate threat, missed the larger pattern. A dry chuckle. I taught you better than that. You taught me a lot of things, including how to recognize when my mentor was dirty. Dirty. Thornton repeated the word like testing foreign cuisine. Is that what you call refusing to sacrifice assets for political convenience? I protected people, Marcus. Protected intelligence networks that would have collapsed if I'd followed official channels. You protected yourself. Cooper died because you withheld information. Silence stretched. When Thornton spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been regret. Cooper died because war is messy and intelligence is messier. I made calls you were too junior to understand. Calls that kept more people alive than they killed. Marcus pulled out of the parking spot, driving one-handed while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. Why are you doing this? Why now? Because 10 years ago you burned me based on incomplete information. NSA erased my career, foreign partners erased my life. I spent 5 years in hiding, rebuilding from nothing. Thornton's voice hardened. And then I discovered NSA had altered your report, made me the scapegoat for institutional failures. You wrote the truth, Marcus. They twisted it into lies. The words hit like physical impact. You're lying. Am I? Check the metadata on your original submission. Compare it to the official record. They changed dates, redacted context, made me look like a rogue operator instead of someone trying to work within a broken system. Marcus's mind raced. He'd written that report in grief and rage, convinced Thornton's decisions had killed Cooper. Never thought to verify the final version matched his submission. Trusted the system because he'd been trained to trust it. Even if that's true, it doesn't justify what you're doing now. I'm not looking for justification. I'm looking for justice. Thornton's tone shifted, became almost gentle. I don't want to hurt you, Marcus. Despite everything, you were the best student I ever had. But I need leverage against the people who destroyed me. Lockwood Industries has contracts with every agency that burned me. Taking their data gives me the proof I need to expose the truth. And framing me in the process? The frame was insurance. If you'd stayed quiet like I expected, it would never have mattered. But you couldn't help yourself. Saw the breach. Had to be the hero. Just like always. A pause. You're predictable, Marcus. That's your greatest weakness. The truck merged onto I-95, traffic heavy with afternoon rush building early. Marcus kept his voice level. What do you want? I want you to stop interfering. Let me finish what I started. In return, I'll make sure the ghost account evidence disappears. You keep your job. Your daughter keeps her health care. Everyone wins. Except Lockwood Industries loses proprietary data worth billions. They'll survive. Big companies always do. Thornton's tone hardened. But Emma won't survive without her medication. You've seen the bills, Marcus. You know what happens if you lose coverage. There it was. The real leverage, spoken aloud. Thornton knew about Emma's asthma, knew about the costs, knew exactly which pressure point would make Marcus consider compromising. Classic intelligence work. Gather personal information, apply it with surgical precision. You leave my daughter out of this. She's already in it. Has been since you started working at Lockwood. I've been watching you for 2 years, Marcus, waiting for the right opportunity. When the acquisition talk started, I knew this was my chance. Marcus's chest tightened, rage and fear mixing into something combustible. If you touch her, I won't touch her. I don't need to. Thornton's voice carried absolute confidence. All I need is for you to stand down, let the investigation fizzle. In 3 days, I'll have what I need and disappear. The ghost account gets erased, you go back to fixing cables, Emma stays healthy. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. It is if you stop making it complicated. You've always had a problem with that, overcomplicating clean operations because you needed to feel righteous. A long exhale, almost sad. I'll give you until midnight to decide. After that, the ghost account evidence gets leaked to federal prosecutors. They'll charge you as an accomplice, Freeze your assets pending investigation. Emma loses coverage within 48 hours. The line went dead. Marcus drove in silence, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The rational part of his mind cataloged facts. Thornton alive, Thornton targeting Lockwood specifically, Thornton offering a deal that protected Emma while destroying the company. The emotional part wanted to put his fist through something. He pulled into the school parking lot at 3:12, 3 minutes early. Parents clustered near the entrance, chatting about weekend plans and soccer schedules. Oblivious to the weight pressing down on Marcus's shoulders, he got out, leaned against the truck's hood, tried to arrange his face into something approaching normal. The bell rang. Kids poured out in chaotic streams, backpacks bouncing, voices overlapping. Emma appeared fourth in line, her pink backpack nearly as big as she was. She spotted him immediately, face lighting up with the kind of pure joy that made everything else feel distant and manageable. She ran over, crashed into him with the full-body hug only 9-year-olds delivered. "Dad, you're early." "Finished work ahead of schedule." The lie came easy, protective. "Thought we could grab ice cream before dinner." "Really? Even though it's Tuesday?" Emma looked up, suspicious of this deviation from routine. "Especially because it's Tuesday. Sometimes you need ice cream for no reason." They drove to the shop 3 blocks from their apartment, ordered her usual mint chocolate chip in a waffle cone. Marcus got nothing, just watched her tackle the ice cream with determined focus, green smudges gathering at the corners of her mouth. "How was school?" he asked, because normal questions helped maintain the illusion. "Good. We're learning long division. It's hard, but I'm getting it." She licked melting ice cream from her wrist. "And Jenny said her dad works at Lockwood too, in accounting. She asked if I knew you." Marcus's chest tightened. "What did you tell her?" "That you're the best at fixing things." Emma smiled around her cone. "That when stuff breaks, you make it work again." The simple faith in that statement nearly broke him. She believed her father could fix anything, solve any problem, keep their small world stable. And he wanted desperately to deserve that trust, to be the person she thought he was rather than the man caught between impossible choices. His phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. "Board meeting moved to 5 p.m. Catherine wants you there early." He typed back, "On my way soon." Emma finished her ice cream, wiped her hands on napkins Marcus provided. "Can we stop at home first? I need to feed Mr. Whiskers." Their cat, 7 pounds of gray fur and attitude. Marcus nodded, drove them to the apartment building where they'd lived since Emma was 4. 2 bedrooms, aging appliances, rent that took half his paycheck. But it was home, stable, the kind of boring normalcy he'd craved after years of classified chaos. Emma ran inside, greeting the cat with the same enthusiasm she'd shown Marcus. He watched her pour kibble, talking to Mr. Whiskers about her day like the cat understood every word. So young, so trusting, so completely dependent on Marcus making the right choices. Thornton's offer echoed in his mind. Stand down. Let it go. Protect Emma. But standing down meant 14,000 people lost their jobs when the acquisition failed. Meant proprietary defense technology ended up in unknown hands. Meant Thornton stayed free to repeat this performance with other companies, other victims. Marcus's wife had told him not to let fear stop him from doing right, but she'd never faced a choice where doing right might cost their daughter everything. His phone buzzed again. This time, Catherine. Need to talk before board meeting. Important. Marcus checked his watch. 4:23. Enough time to get Emma situated with their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who watched her when work ran late. Emma protested mildly, wanting to stay home with the cat, but accepted the arrangement when Marcus promised pizza for dinner. "Will you be home for bedtime?" she asked, backpack already on her shoulder. "I'll try, sweetheart, but if not, Mrs. Chen will tuck you in and I'll check on you when I get back." "Okay." She hugged him again, quick and fierce. "Love you, Dad. Love you too, Emma, more than anything." He watched her disappear into Mrs. Chen's apartment, waved when she turned for one last look. Then he drove back to Lockwood Industries, mind still wrestling with Thornton's ultimatum. Midnight deadline, 3 days to disappear, Emma's healthcare hanging in the balance. Catherine was waiting in her office when Marcus arrived at 4:47. The space reflected her personality. Minimal decoration, everything functional, a wall of windows overlooking Philadelphia's financial district. She gestured to a chair, closed the door behind him. I spoke with federal contacts about James Thornton. She didn't waste time on preamble. Officially dead, but no confirmation. His death certificate was filed by CIA, classified circumstances, no autopsy, no witnesses to the actual incident. So he faked it. Or CIA helped him disappear for operational reasons and later claimed death for convenience. Catherine sat across from him. Either way, if he's alive and targeting us, we're dealing with someone who has institutional protection. Marcus absorbed this, worse than he'd thought. He called me. Catherine's expression sharpened. When? 20 minutes ago. Offered a deal. I stand down. He erases the ghost account evidence. Emma keeps healthcare. Investigation fizzles. He gets away clean. What did you say? Nothing yet. He gave me until midnight. Marcus met her eyes. He's blackmailing Richard Caldwell with gambling debts and photographs. Probably has leverage on others. This isn't just about stealing data. It's about building a network of compromised assets across defense contractors. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, processing implications. If we go public with this, he releases the ghost account evidence. You get charged as an accomplice. Yes. And Emma loses coverage. Within 48 hours. Marcus forced himself to say it plainly. I lose my job. My assets get frozen pending investigation. Even if I'm eventually cleared, the legal process takes months. Emma doesn't have months. Catherine stood, pacing to the window. City lights were beginning to glow against twilight, skyscrapers transforming into vertical constellations. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? The choice that defined everything after. Marcus thought about Cooper bleeding out in Berlin, thought about his wife telling him not to hide, thought about Emma trusting him to fix things. I'm going to finish it. The certainty settled into his bones as he spoke. Thornton expects me to fold because he thinks I'll always choose Emma's immediate safety over abstract principles, but letting him win doesn't actually protect her. It just delays the consequences. How do you figure? Because men like Thornton don't stop. He'll use what he steals from Lockwood to target other companies, build more leverage, expand his operation. Eventually, someone catches him, traces the network, finds Richard's cooperation and the ghost account. Evidence leads back to me anyway, just delayed. Marcus stood, joining Catherine at the window. The only way to actually protect Emma is to expose him completely. Burn down his entire operation so thoroughly that he can't retaliate. Catherine nodded slowly. That's a significant risk. So is breathing when you have asthma. We manage risk, we don't eliminate it. Marcus checked his watch. 4:56. What did you want to tell me before the board meeting? She turned from the window, expression hardening into something that reminded Marcus why she'd become CEO. I'm making you Director of Security, effective immediately, full access to all systems, direct report to me, salary commensurate with the position. Marcus blinked. You're promoting me in the middle of a crisis while I'm under investigation? I'm promoting you because you saved this company and I trust your judgment more than most of the people on my board. Catherine's voice carried absolute conviction. Also because if you're going to hunt Thornton, you'll need resources. Authority opens doors that contractors can't access. The board will fight this. Let them. I control 51% voting shares. They can complain all they want. She extended her hand. Do you accept? Marcus looked at the offered hand, the physical symbol of trust and risk intertwined. Accepting meant deeper involvement, higher visibility, more exposure to Thornton's retaliation. It also meant better tools to fight back and explicit institutional backing for what needed doing. He shook her hand. I accept. The board meeting started at 5 p.m. sharp in the executive conference room where this had all begun 6 hours earlier. 12 board members sat around the mahogany table, faces ranging from curious to hostile. Catherine took her position at the head, Marcus standing beside her in his work shirt. No time to change, no desire to pretend he belonged in their world of tailored suits and inherited confidence. Before we begin formal proceedings, I have an announcement. Catherine's voice cut through murmuring. Effective immediately, Marcus Hayes is appointed Director of Security for Lockwood Industries, reporting directly to me. Silence, then eruption. 3 board members spoke simultaneously, objections overlapping into noise. Catherine waited, expression unchanged until they exhausted themselves into quiet. You can't be serious. Robert Ashford, no relation despite the name, leaned forward with the aggressive certainty of someone unaccustomed to being overruled. A contractor? With a ghost account tied to this breach? This is insanity. This is recognition of competence. Catherine's tone permitted no argument. Mr. Hayes identified a sophisticated infiltration, contained it before catastrophic data loss, and provided law enforcement with evidence that led to Richard Caldwell's arrest. Without his intervention, we'd currently be explaining to shareholders how we lost $4 billion. But the ghost account? Another member started. Sarah stood, tablet in hand. The ghost account was created by a third party to frame Mr. Hayes. We've analyzed the coding signatures. They mimic his old NSA methodology but contain timing discrepancies that prove external authorship. NSA? Ashford's eyebrows rose. You're telling me we're hiring someone with intelligence connections we knew nothing about? I'm telling you we're retaining someone whose specialized skills just saved this company. Catherine's patience thinned visibly. His background was classified, which is why it didn't appear in standard employment screening. I've since verified his credentials through federal contacts. Everything checks out. Marcus remained silent, letting Catherine navigate political waters he had no skill for. He watched board members calculate angles, assess risks, weigh loyalty against self-preservation. Corporate governance operated on different rules than intelligence work, but the underlying dynamics stayed constant: power, fear, and who controlled the narrative. I want to hear from him directly. A woman named Patricia Moss spoke from the far end. Mr. Hayes, do you have any connection to the individual who created the ghost account? Marcus met her eyes. Yes, James Thornton was my mentor at NSA until 2014. I wrote the report that ended his career after a mission failure that killed one of our team. He was supposedly killed in 2015, but I now believe he faked his death and is orchestrating this breach for revenge. That's quite a story. Ashford's skepticism dripped audibly. It's quite a pattern. Marcus kept his tone even. The breach timing coincides with your acquisition talks. The ghost account uses my name and coding style. Richard Caldwell was blackmailed into providing access. Someone with deep knowledge of intelligence tradecraft designed this operation specifically to implicate me while stealing your data. Patricia leaned back, expression thoughtful. What does he want? Leverage against agencies that burned him. Your defense contracts give him access to classified project details he can use as insurance or sell to interested parties. Marcus paused. He also wants me to stand down and let him finish. Why would you refuse? Ashford challenged. Seems like cooperation would clear your name. Because men like Thornton don't stop at one target. Today it's Lockwood, tomorrow it's another contractor, next year it's critical infrastructure. Marcus felt Catherine's subtle approval beside him. Letting him win here doesn't actually protect anyone, it just postpones consequences. The board exchanged glances, silent communication Marcus couldn't fully read. Finally, Patricia spoke again. What's your plan, Director Hayes? The title felt foreign, too large for someone who'd been fixing cables that morning. But Marcus wore it anyway because Emma needed him to. Trace his operation completely, find where he's receiving the stolen data, identify his infrastructure, gather evidence that federal prosecutors can't ignore, then burn it all down so thoroughly he can't rebuild. That sounds dangerous, Patricia observed. It is, but so is breathing when you have asthma and can't afford your medication without company insurance. Marcus let that land. I'm doing this because my daughter's life depends on Lockwood staying solvent. That makes my motivations pretty transparent. Ashford started to object again, but Catherine cut him off. I'm not asking for board approval. I control majority shares. I'm informing you as courtesy. Her gaze swept the room. Marcus has my full confidence and complete access to company resources for this investigation. Anyone who interferes will answer to me personally. The meeting dissolved into technical discussions about acquisition timeline adjustments and damage control strategies. Marcus slipped out, no longer needed for decisions above his authority. Sarah followed him into the hallway. That went better than expected. She pulled up something on her tablet. I've been digging into Meridian Strategic Holdings. The shell company has received data transfers from 4 other defense contractors in the past 6 months. Small amounts, testing infrastructure probably. Building his network. Marcus checked his watch, 5:38. Midnight deadline approaching like a countdown. He's been planning this for at least a year. David appeared from a side office, laptop under his arm. I might have something. The ghost account creation was routed through a VPN, but VPNs have to terminate somewhere physical. I traced the endpoint to a data center in Arlington, Virginia. Near Langley. Sarah finished the geography. Near Langley, David confirmed. But here's the interesting part. The data center caters specifically to government contractors doing classified work. High security, biometric access, the works. Someone with credentials rented server space there. Marcus's mind raced through implications. Can you get tenant records? Not legally. But I know someone who works there owes me a favor from college. David hesitated. It's ethically gray. Gray is where we live now. Marcus started walking toward David's office. Make the call. They huddled around David's desk while he dialed, putting it on speaker. A woman answered after 3 rings. David? It's been forever. Hey, Rachel, I need a favor, kind of urgent. David explained they were tracking a security breach, needed to know who rented specific server space in the past 4 months. Rachel went quiet, clearly weighing friendship against professional ethics. I could lose my job for this. I know, but we're talking about someone who's blackmailing board members and stealing classified defense data, federal crime, national security implications, the whole thing. More silence, then typing sounds. What's the server IP? David read it off. Rachel's typing intensified, mouse clicking audibly through the phone. Okay, that block was rented by a company called Thornton Risk Management, incorporated in Delaware 2 months ago. The contact listed is James Thornton, with a Virginia address. Marcus felt vindication and dread mixing equally. He's not even hiding. Why would he? Sarah asked. Officially, he's dead. No one's looking for him. Rachel spoke up again. There's a note in the account. He requested specific security measures, no CCTV in his server room, biometric access restricted to him alone, and a dead man switch protocol. Marcus's stomach dropped. What kind of dead man switch? If he doesn't check in every 72 hours, the servers wipe automatically and send encrypted packages to a distribution list. Rachel paused. That's not standard. That's what people do when they're worried about being arrested or killed, or when they want insurance against retaliation. Marcus paced David's small office, mind working through Thornton's strategy. He's built this so taking him down directly triggers data release. We'd need to disable the dead man switch before confronting him. How do you disable something that requires his biometric access? David asked. You don't. You trick the system into thinking he's still checking in while you extract the evidence. Marcus stopped pacing. I've done this before, different context, but the principle's the same. Sarah looked up from her tablet. You're talking about breaking into a secure data center and hacking government-grade servers. I'm talking about stopping someone who's already committed multiple felonies and threatened a 9-year-old's health care. Marcus met her eyes. You can walk away, both of you. This crosses lines and I won't blame you for choosing not to follow. David closed his laptop. I'm in. Richard Caldwell was my mentor before he turned into this. I owe it to him, to the person he used to be, to fix this. Sarah nodded slowly. I spent my career analyzing strategic risks. This is the biggest one I've seen. Walking away doesn't make it disappear. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Alliance. Partnership. The kind of trust he'd stopped believing existed outside combat zones. Okay. We need detailed building schematics for the data center, information on their security protocols, and a plan that doesn't get us killed or arrested. I can help with building plans. Rachel's voice came through the speaker, startling everyone. They'd forgotten she was still on the line. I work there. I know the layouts, the guard rotations, the weak points in coverage. Rachel, you can't. David started. Yes, I can. If this Thornton guy is storing classified defense data on our servers, that makes my company complicit. I'd rather help stop it than watch my employer get shut down by federal investigation. Determination hardened her tone. When do you need this? Marcus checked his watch again, 6:04 p.m. Tonight. He gave me a midnight deadline. After that, he leaks the ghost account evidence and my daughter loses health care coverage. Jesus. Rachel breathed out slowly. Okay, I'm off shift at 8. Meet me at the Starbucks on Wilson Boulevard at 8:30. Come alone. Security knows me, but strangers attract attention. The call ended. Marcus stared at David's phone, processing how quickly this had escalated from corporate security breach to planning what amounted to an intelligence operation on domestic soil. The lines between his old life and current one were dissolving, revealing that maybe they'd never been as separate as he'd wanted to believe. We need equipment. Sarah started a list on her tablet. Laptop with penetration testing tools, biometric spoofers if we can get them. Portable storage for copying data. I have most of that at home, Marcus admitted, from before. Kept it because old habits die hard. David looked at him with new understanding. You knew something like this might happen eventually. Not specifically, but I knew that walking away from intelligence work doesn't mean it walks away from you. Marcus headed for the door. I need to check on Emma, make sure she's settled for the night. Then I'll meet Rachel at 8:30. We're coming with you. Sarah stood, no room for argument in her posture. It's too dangerous. It's dangerous alone. David grabbed his laptop. 3 people have better odds than 1. Plus Sarah's right, we're already complicit. Might as well see it through. Marcus wanted to argue, to protect them from consequences he'd brought into their lives, but he also recognized the truth. He needed help. Thornton had built an operation designed to overwhelm single actors. Fighting back required the kind of teamwork Marcus had abandoned when he left NSA. They drove separately. Marcus to his apartment, Sarah and David to gather equipment and prepare Mrs. Chen answered her door when Marcus knocked, Emma visible behind her watching television. Back already? Mrs. Chen smiled. She's been good as gold. We made cookies. Emma ran over, chocolate smudged on her chin. Dad, Mrs. Chen taught me her recipe. Can we make them at home? Absolutely. Marcus knelt, pulling her into a hug that lasted longer than usual. She squirmed after a moment, embarrassed by public affection but not really wanting him to let go. You okay, Dad? You seem sad. 9 years old and she could read him like large print. Marcus smoothed her hair back, memorizing her face, brown eyes serious beyond their years, freckles scattered across her nose, the small scar on her chin from when she'd fallen off a swing at 6. I'm okay, sweetheart. Just tired. Long day at work. He straightened, producing a smile that felt only half fake. I need to go back for a few more hours. Will you be all right staying here until bedtime? Can I bring Mr. Whiskers? Not tonight. He's happier at home. Marcus kissed her forehead. Be good for Mrs. Chen. I'll check on you when I get back. Promise? Emma held up her pinky, their ritual. Marcus linked his pinky with hers. Promise. Love you more than anything. Love you more than ice cream, Emma's highest metric of affection. He left before emotion could undermine the composure he needed, drove home through darkening streets. Philadelphia transitioning from business district to residential neighborhoods, where families ate dinner and helped with homework and didn't think about intelligence operations or dead man switches. His apartment felt emptier than usual. Mr. Whiskers meowed complaint from the kitchen, annoyed at delayed feeding. Marcus filled the cat's bowl, then went to his bedroom closet. The equipment bag sat on the top shelf behind winter coats, exactly where he'd put it 5 years ago when he'd decided this chapter was closed. He pulled it down, unzipped it, inventory checking by muscle memory, laptop with dual boot capabilities and preloaded penetration tools. USB drives containing legacy NSA software technically illegal to possess but invaluable for certain tasks. Biometric spoofing kit that could replicate fingerprints and retinal patterns if you had source samples. Lockpicks, signal jammers, a handgun he'd never fired outside the range, tools of a trade he'd promised himself he'd abandoned. Looking at them now felt like confronting photographic evidence of who he used to be versus who he'd tried to become. The distance between those identities had seemed vast this morning. Tonight it collapsed to nothing. Marcus changed into dark clothes, jeans, black jacket, boots with good traction. Practical, anonymous, the kind of outfit that wouldn't draw attention in a data center parking lot. He loaded the equipment bag into his truck, checked that the handgun was unloaded and secured separately. Carrying it felt wrong, but going unarmed against Thornton felt worse. Sarah texted at 7:53, "Ready when you are. Meeting at David's." Marcus drove to the address she provided, a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood where porch lights glowed warm against October darkness. David answered the door, changed into similar dark practical clothes. Sarah sat at the dining room table with her laptop, police scanner playing softly in the background. "Monitoring for any security alerts in Arlington," she explained without looking up. "If Rachel's helping us, I want warning if something goes wrong." David had spread building schematics across the table, blueprints for the data center showing multiple floors, server rooms, security checkpoints. "Rachel sent these. Also guard rotation schedules and camera blind spots. She's thorough." Marcus studied the layouts, mind automatically calculating approach vectors and exit strategies. Main entrance has biometric screening plus metal detectors. Loading dock in back has card readers but less security presence. Third floor contains the server room Thornton rented. "How do we get past card readers without Rachel's credentials?" Sarah asked. "Signal cloning." Marcus pulled a small device from his bag. "Get within 3 feet of an active RFID badge. This copies the signal. We clone Rachel's when we meet her, use it to access the loading dock." David nodded slowly. "And once we're inside?" "Fast and quiet. Copy everything from Thornton's servers, disable the dead man switch, get out before anyone realizes we were there." Marcus made it sound simple, which it absolutely wasn't. They drove to Arlington in Sarah's car, less conspicuous than Marcus's contractor truck. The Starbucks on Wilson Boulevard was moderately crowded with government workers grabbing evening caffeine. Rachel sat in a corner booth, mid-30s with sharp eyes and nervous energy. She recognized David immediately, relaxed fractionally when he approached with Marcus and Sarah. "This is really happening." Rachel's hands wrapped around her coffee cup like it provided warmth she desperately needed. "You can still back out." Marcus slid into the booth across from her. "No judgment, no hard feelings. I'm not backing out. I'm just processing." She pulled a folder from her bag. "Updated guard schedules. New guy started tonight, doesn't know the patterns yet. That gives you a 30-minute window between rotations on the 3rd floor if you time it right." Sarah studied the schedules, cross-referencing with the schematics. "What about internal cameras?" "Motion activated in common areas, but the individual server rooms don't have coverage. Privacy regulations for classified work." Rachel pulled out her badge, set it on the table. You'll need this signal to access the loading dock and server floor. After that, you're on your own. Marcus produced the cloning device, casually placing it near her badge while pretending to reach for sugar packets. The device vibrated once, signal captured. He pocketed it smoothly, the kind of sleight of hand that came from practice. One more thing. Rachel lowered her voice. Thornton came in today, late afternoon, spent 40 minutes in his server room, left looking stressed. He knows something's wrong, David realized. Probably noticed we contained the Lockwood breach, which means he'll be watching for retaliation. Sarah's strategic mind worked through implications. He might have additional security we don't know about. Marcus considered this. Thornton had always been paranoid, the productive kind that kept operators alive. If he suspected Marcus might come after him, he'd prepare. The question was, how thoroughly? We go anyway, Marcus decided. Waiting just gives him time to reinforce. We move tonight, hit fast before he fully adapts. Rachel slid a key card across the table. This opens the emergency stairwell on the loading dock side. Takes you straight to third floor without passing through main security. But it's alarmed after hours. You'll have 90 seconds to reach the server room before guards respond. 90 seconds. Marcus filed that timeline away. Doable. They left the Starbucks separately. Rachel first to maintain plausible deniability. Marcus, Sarah, and David regrouped at the car. The data center was 3 miles away, modern glass and steel building that looked like any other office complex. No indication of the classified information stored inside, no suggestion of the operation about to unfold. They parked 2 blocks away in a commercial lot, walked the distance carrying equipment in backpacks that could have held laptops for late office work. The loading dock sat on the building's north side, poorly lit by design, access door barely visible between dumpsters. Marcus swiped the cloned RFID signal. The lock clicked green. They slipped inside, emergency stairwell exactly where Rachel indicated. 90 seconds started the moment the door closed behind them. They took stairs 2 at a time, moving fast but quiet. Third floor door required another RFID swipe. Through into a corridor lined with server rooms, each marked with corporate names and security ratings. Thornton Risk Management was halfway down, room 347. Marcus checked his watch. 71 seconds since entry, 19 remaining. He pressed the spoofed badge against the reader, red light, denied. Shit, David breathed. He upgraded security. Biometric overlay. Marcus pulled the fingerprint spoofer from his bag, pressing synthetic material against the reader. Still red. He's using retinal scan. 10 seconds. No way to spoof retinal patterns without source samples they didn't have. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm. Guards will be here any second. Marcus made a decision that bypassed planning entirely. He pulled the lockpick set, inserted tension wrench and rake into the mechanical backup beneath the electronic reader. Old buildings always had analog backups for power failures. His hands moved from muscle memory, feeling for pin resistance, applying rotational pressure. Click. The door opened at 4 seconds remaining. They tumbled inside, Marcus closing it quietly behind them. The server room hummed with electronic life. Rack-mounted systems blinking status lights, cooling fans creating white noise that would mask their presence. Marcus exhaled slowly, adrenaline spiking, then settling. That was too close. Sarah's voice trembled slightly. Close only matters with explosives and horseshoes. Marcus moved to the primary server rack, pulling his laptop out. David, I need you monitoring the network for any alerts. Sarah, watch the door. They fell into roles like they'd trained together. Each person focused on their piece. Marcus connected his laptop to Thornton's servers, bypassing login screens with tools that technically didn't exist anymore. The system architecture appeared on his screen, exactly as sophisticated as he'd feared. Thornton had built redundant security layers, encrypted data storage, the deadman switch running on a separate system that pinged every 12 hours requiring biometric confirmation. If the ping failed twice consecutively, automated protocols triggered, servers wiped, encrypted packages sent to recipients Marcus couldn't identify without deeper access. I need at least 20 minutes to copy everything and disable the switch. Marcus assessed the scope. Can you give me that? David checked his monitoring software. Guard rotation puts us safe for 18 minutes. After that, someone comes through this corridor. Then I work fast. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating directory structures and security protocols. He found the dead man's switch code, began tracing its logic, looking for the vulnerability every system had, the oversight every programmer made. There, a backup authentication protocol that accepted encrypted files instead of biometric scan, designed so Thornton could check in remotely if needed. But it created an exploitable pathway. Marcus crafted a fake authentication package, injected it into the system, held his breath while the servers processed. Accepted. The dead man's switch reset, timer extending to 72 hours. Marcus had just bought them 3 days before it would trigger again. Switch is neutralized. He started the data copy, watching transfer speeds. Now we just need to wait. 13 minutes remaining. The servers hummed their mechanical song while gigabytes transferred to Marcus's portable drives. Evidence of Thornton's entire operation. The blackmail material on Richard, the stolen Lockwood data, communications with other compromised targets. Everything federal prosecutors would need. Sarah shifted by the door. We're cutting this really close. Story of my life. Marcus watched the progress bar inch forward. 73%. 81. 94. Footsteps in the corridor outside. All 3 of them froze. The steps slowed near room 347, stopped directly outside. Door handle turned slowly, testing the lock. Marcus's hand dropped to the handgun in his waistband, fingers closing around grip he'd hoped not to need. The handle released. Footsteps continued past, fading toward the stairwell. Guard doing routine checks, nothing suspicious triggering additional scrutiny. They waited in silence until the corridor cleared. 100%. Marcus disconnected the drives, pocketed them carefully. We're done. Let's go. They slipped back into the corridor, moving quickly toward the emergency stairwell. Down 3 flights, through the loading dock door, out into October darkness that felt like sanctuary. They walked to the car with forced casual pace, equipment bags heavy with stolen data, hearts pounding with aftermath adrenaline. No alarms, no pursuit, clean exit. They drove back to David's townhouse in silence, each processing what they'd just done. Breaking and entering, theft of digital evidence, vigilante justice bypassing official channels, the kind of actions that could land them in federal prison if discovered, but might also save 14,000 jobs and expose a criminal network. Inside David's house, Marcus connected the drives to his laptop, began sorting through files. Thornton's operation was even larger than they'd suspected. 8 defense contractors compromised, blackmail material on 11 executives, stolen classified designs worth hundreds of millions, and communications with a name Marcus recognized. Deputy Director Alan Foster at NSA. Why is Thornton communicating with NSA? Sarah looked over his shoulder at the emails. Marcus felt cold certainty spreading. Because Foster is the one who altered my original report. Thornton's been gathering evidence to expose the corruption. That's his leverage, proof that NSA fabricated intelligence to justify burning him. David scrolled through another set of files. He's not just a thief. He's building a case for institutional whistleblowing. The moral calculus shifted uncomfortably. Thornton wasn't purely criminal. He was responding to genuine injustice, using illegal means to expose systemic corruption. The kind of ethical maze Marcus had hoped to avoid by leaving intelligence work. That doesn't justify blackmailing Richard or threatening Emma, Sarah pointed out. Good motivations don't excuse harmful methods. No, Marcus agreed, but it complicates the solution. If we just hand this to federal prosecutors, they'll bury the NSA evidence to protect Foster. Thornton goes to prison. The corruption continues. They sat in silence, wrestling with implications. Finally, Sarah spoke. What if we do both? Give prosecutors the criminal evidence, blackmail, theft, data breach, but release the NSA corruption evidence publicly where they can't suppress it. Whistleblower route. David nodded slowly. Post it to secure journalism platforms, multiple outlets simultaneously. By the time NSA realizes what happened, it's already public. Marcus considered the approach, risky for different reasons but morally cleaner. We'd need to coordinate timing carefully, release the NSA material, then bring in law enforcement before Thornton can retaliate. His phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Time's up, Marcus. You had until midnight to decide. I'm activating contingencies now. JT. Marcus's blood went cold. He checked his watch, 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before Thornton's deadline, and somehow the man knew Marcus had moved against him. He's watching us. Marcus stood, mind racing through possibilities. He knows we copied his data. How? David demanded. We disabled the dead man switch, left no traces. The switch reset, Marcus realized. When I injected the fake authentication, the system logged it. Thornton monitors those logs remotely, saw the timing was wrong, knew someone had accessed his servers. Sarah pulled up news feeds on her laptop. What contingencies? What's he activating? Her screen filled with breaking news alerts. FBI raid at Lockwood Industries. Anonymous tip about classified data breach and insider trading. Catherine Lockwood taken into custody for questioning. Emergency board meeting called to remove her as CEO. He's burning everything. Marcus felt his world tilting. Going scorched earth because we forced his hand. More alerts flooded in. Ghost account evidence leaked to Washington Post and New York Times. Federal warrant issued for Marcus Hayes in connection with cyber espionage. Emma's school receiving suspicious packages requiring evacuation. Emma. Marcus ran for the door, Sarah and David scrambling after him. He drove toward Emma's school with singular focus, traffic laws becoming suggestions. His phone rang. Mrs. Chen, voice shaking. Marcus, the police are here. They're asking about Emma, about you. They have a warrant. Don't let them take her. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. I'm 10 minutes away, just please don't let them take her. The call dropped. Marcus pushed the truck faster, Philadelphia streets blurring past. Sarah white-knuckled the door handle, David bracing against the dashboard. The school appeared ahead, police cars surrounding the building, bomb squad vehicles parked at angles. Marcus abandoned the truck in the street, running toward the building. An officer intercepted him, hand on weapon. Sir, you need to stay back. My daughter's inside. Emma Hayes. Marcus tried to push past, got shoved back harder. Mr. Hayes, you're wanted for questioning in a federal investigation. I'm going to need you to... A voice cut through the chaos. Let him through. Detective Morrison approached, expression grim. The packages were fake, just envelopes full of sand designed to trigger evacuation. Your daughter's safe with Mrs. Chen in the principal's office. Marcus nearly collapsed with relief. Morrison caught his arm, steadying him. Someone's playing games with you. Using your kid as psychological warfare, that crosses lines even for intelligence operations. It's James Thornton. Marcus forced words through adrenaline crash. He's a former NSA analyst who faked his death and built a criminal network. I have evidence. Everything he's stolen, everyone he's compromised, proof of the corruption he's exposing. Morrison studied him carefully. You broke into that data center in Arlington tonight, didn't you? No point lying. Yes. Thought so. Arlington PD called an hour ago asking if we knew anything about suspicious activity at a government facility. Morrison pulled out handcuffs, then paused. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me that evidence, all of it. Then you're going to come in for official questioning. But first, you're going to see your daughter and explain why police are surrounding her school. Marcus nodded, throat tight. Morrison led him inside where Emma sat in the principal's office, Mrs. Chen holding her hand. Emma's eyes were red from crying, but she wasn't panicking. Her inhaler sat on the desk nearby, unused. When she saw Marcus, she ran to him with the desperate relief of a child whose world had tilted off axis. "Dad, they said there were bombs. They made everyone leave and I couldn't find you." Her words tumbled over each other, fear and confusion and trust all mixed together. Marcus held her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe. Everything's okay now." "Is it?" She looked up at him with those two serious eyes. "Is everything really okay?" That was the question, wasn't it? The one Marcus couldn't answer with comfortable lies. Because everything wasn't okay. He'd been framed for federal crimes, his employer was in custody, and the man orchestrating it all was still out there pulling strings. But Emma was safe in his arms, breathing steadily without medication, and that had to be enough. "It will be." He smoothed her hair back. "I promise, sweetheart. It will be." Morrison gave them 5 minutes, then collected Marcus along with Sarah and David, who'd caught up. They drove to police headquarters in official vehicles, Marcus sitting in back with Emma while Mrs. Chen followed in her own car. The station smelled like bad coffee and institutional cleaning products. Fluorescent lights harsh after the darkness outside. They were separated into different rooms. Emma stayed with Mrs. Chen in a family waiting area with magazines and vending machines. Marcus sat across from Morrison and Detective Porter in an interrogation room that felt grimly familiar. "Show me what you've got." Morrison set a laptop on the table. Marcus connected one of the portable drives, pulled up the organized evidence files. Thornton's entire operation. 8 defense contractors compromised, blackmail material on 11 executives including Richard Caldwell, stolen classified designs, and here, he opened another folder. Communications proving NSA Deputy Director Alan Foster falsified intelligence reports to cover up operational failures. Morrison and Porter read in silence, scrolling through evidence that painted a picture of corruption spanning both criminal and government spheres. When Morrison finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. "This is above my pay grade. We're talking multiple federal agencies, classified information, international implications." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling FBI. They'll want everything you just showed me." "Wait," Marcus stopped him. "If FBI takes this, Foster will bury the NSA evidence. That's why Thornton went rogue in the first place. He tried official channels and got burned. So what do you suggest?" Morrison's tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Let me leak the NSA material to journalists first. Give them 2 hours head start before you bring in FBI. Once it's public, Foster can't suppress it." Marcus met Morrison's eyes. "I know that's asking you to compromise your investigation, but it's the only way to expose the full truth." Porter looked at Morrison. Morrison looked at the ceiling, clearly wrestling with regulations versus justice. Finally, he sighed. "I'm going to get coffee. Might take me a couple hours to find a good cup at this time of night." He stood, heading for the door. "Don't touch anything while I'm gone." The door closed. Marcus understood immediately. Morrison was giving him window to act, maintaining plausible deniability for himself. Porter pulled out his own laptop, not looking at Marcus. "I'm doing paperwork, very focused, not paying attention to anything else happening in this room." Sarah grinned. "I like these guys." Marcus worked quickly, uploading the NSA evidence to 3 secret journalism platforms: WikiLeaks, The Intercept, and a consortium of investigative reporters who specialized in intelligence community accountability. He crafted a brief summary, attached the raw files, scheduled release for 2 hours from now. Irreversible once initiated. His finger hovered over the final confirmation button. This would expose Thornton's legitimate grievances while also ending any chance of quiet resolution. Would trigger federal investigations, congressional hearings, international scrutiny. Would burn bridges Marcus had spent years building in the intelligence community. But it would also protect 14,000 Lockwood employees and prevent future victims of Thornton's network. He pressed confirm. The upload started, progress bars crawling toward completion. Marcus sat back, watching evidence disseminate beyond any hope of containment. In 2 hours, the truth would be public and undeniable. His phone rang. Thornton again. Marcus answered, putting it on speaker so Morrison's recording equipment could capture it. "You've made a serious mistake, Marcus." Thornton's voice carried weary disappointment rather than rage. "I gave you an out. You chose escalation. You threatened my daughter's school. That ended any possibility of cooperation." Marcus kept his tone level. "I've copied your entire operation and I'm releasing the NSA evidence publicly. In 2 hours, everyone will know what Foster did. You'll get your vindication. And I'll also get arrested." Thornton laughed bitterly. "You think exposing Foster makes me a hero? I'm still guilty of blackmail, theft, conspiracy. The truth doesn't erase crimes, Marcus. Just redistributes blame. Then turn yourself in. Use the publicity to negotiate a plea deal. Tell your story to prosecutors who'll actually listen now that it's public." Silence on the line. Thornton considering possibilities. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted, less mentor, more tired old man. "I taught you to think 3 moves ahead. You're finally learning. I learned a lot from you. Some of it was even true." Marcus paused. "Where are you, James? Close enough to watch this play out, far enough to disappear if I choose." Another pause. "You protected Emma well. That bomb scare was misdirection, nothing real. I wouldn't hurt a child, Marcus, you know that. I don't know what you'd do anymore. That's the problem with ghosts. They stop playing by the rules that used to define them." "Fair point." Thornton sounded almost amused. "I'll make you a deal, one last offer. When the NSA evidence goes public, Foster will panic. He'll try to activate his own network of compromised assets to control the narrative. I can give you the list, everyone he's got leverage on, everyone who'll jump to protect him. In exchange, you give me 12 hours before you release my location to authorities." Marcus considered. "Why 12 hours?" "Because I'm old and tired and I want to see the sunrise from somewhere that doesn't smell like server rooms and betrayal." Thornton's voice cracked slightly. 12 hours to say goodbye to a life I didn't choose but learned to inhabit. Then I'll turn myself into FBI with a full confession. No games, no resistance." Morrison had returned silently, standing in the doorway, listening. He met Marcus's eyes, gave a small nod. "Permission to make the call." "Deal." Marcus agreed. "Send me Foster's network list. You get 12 hours starting when the NSA evidence publishes." "Done. Check your encrypted email." The line went quiet, then Thornton spoke once more. "Marcus, I'm sorry. About Cooper. About Emma's scare tonight. About putting you in this position. You deserved better from me. We both deserved better from the system we served." Marcus felt unexpected sympathy. "But we work with what we have, not what we wish existed." Wisdom at last. Thornton disconnected. The email arrived 60 seconds later. A comprehensive list of 23 government officials, contractors, and journalists currently compromised by Foster's blackmail network. Morrison read it with growing concern. "This is extensive." He looked at Porter. "We'll need FBI, probably CIA counterintelligence. This touches everything." The next 2 hours passed in organized chaos. FBI arrived, reviewed the evidence, began coordinating with multiple agencies. Catherine Lockwood was released from custody with apologies. The anonymous tip that had her arrested came from Foster's network trying to preemptively discredit her. She called Marcus directly at 1:47 a.m. "You did it." Her voice carried exhaustion and relief. "FBI just briefed me. Thornton's operation exposed, Foster's corruption going public, the acquisition is safe. And Emma's healthcare stays intact." Marcus allowed himself to feel it. "That was always the point. I know. That's why I promoted you." Catherine paused. "The board wants to make the director of security position permanent. Full benefits, salary increase, whatever you need to stay." Marcus looked through the interrogation room window where Emma sat with Mrs. Chen, both of them dozing against each other. His daughter safe, his job secure, the threats neutralized, everything he'd fought for achieved. "I accept," he told Catherine, "on one condition. Name it. Healthcare coverage extended to all contractors, not just my level, everyone. From maintenance to security to admin support, everyone gets the same medical benefits executives receive." Catherine was quiet for several heartbeats. "That's expensive." "It's right, and you can afford it now that the acquisition is safe." Marcus didn't back down. "Those are my terms. Deal. I'll present it to the board tomorrow." She sounded like she was smiling. "You're going to be a pain in my ass, aren't you, Director Hayes?" "Probably, but I'll save your company while doing it." At 2:04 a.m., the NSA evidence went live across all 3 journalism platforms simultaneously. Marcus watched on Morrison's laptop as headlines began forming. Washington Post, NSA Deputy Director accused of falsifying intelligence reports. The Intercept, whistleblower evidence exposes decade of corruption. Reuters picked it up, then BBC, then everyone. The internet exploded. Congressional representatives demanded investigations. NSA issued a terse no comment that convinced nobody. Foster's name trended globally within 15 minutes. Thornton's 12 hours started now. Morrison drove Marcus and Emma home at 3 a.m., the city quiet except for emergency services and late-shift workers. Emma slept against Marcus's shoulder in the back seat, exhausted past fear into simple relief. Mrs. Chen had offered to keep her overnight, but Marcus needed his daughter close, needed to feel her breathing, confirm her safety with his own senses. He carried Emma upstairs to their apartment, tucked her into bed fully dressed because waking her seemed cruel. Mr. Whiskers curled against her immediately, purring comfort. Marcus stood in her doorway watching her sleep, processing everything that had happened in 18 hours. This morning he'd been a contractor fixing cables. Tonight he was director of security with evidence of institutional corruption attached to his name. The distance felt impossible and yet completely natural, like he'd been walking toward this moment his entire life without realizing the destination. His phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. "News is everywhere. You started something that can't be stopped." Marcus typed back. That was the point. Some fires need to burn hot enough to purify. He made coffee despite the late hour, sat at his kitchen table with the laptop showing cascading news coverage. Thornton was out there somewhere, watching the same headlines, seeing his vindication and his destruction happening simultaneously. 12 hours to process the end of everything he'd built. Marcus understood that feeling, the liminal space between identities, between who you were and who you'd become. He'd inhabited it 5 years ago when his wife died and he'd chosen Emma over NSA, inhabited it again tonight when he'd chosen exposure over silence. Transformation hurt, but staying static hurt more. At 3:47 a.m., Morrison called. "FBI wants you for additional debriefing at 9 a.m. Formal witness statement, technical breakdown of the evidence, all official. But they're also offering immunity for the Arlington break-in in exchange for full cooperation. I'll be there." Marcus felt pieces falling into place. "Thank you for the coffee break earlier." "What coffee break? I was doing paperwork the whole time." Morrison's tone carried dry humor. "See you at 9, Director Hayes." Marcus dozed sitting up, unwilling to lie down in case Emma needed him. Morning arrived through kitchen windows, pale sunlight replacing darkness. Emma emerged at 6:30, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Did I dream all that?" she asked quietly. "No, sweetheart. It really happened." Marcus pulled her onto his lap despite her being almost too big for it. "But it's over now. We're safe." "Are you in trouble?" "A little, but the kind that gets sorted out, not the kind that lasts." He kissed the top of her head. "I did something necessary that broke some rules. Now, I'm helping fix what was broken so the rules mean something again." Emma processed this with her characteristic seriousness. Like when I broke the neighbor's window playing ball, so I did extra chores to pay for it. Exactly like that. Consequences for actions, then moving forward better than before. Marcus smiled. You're pretty wise for 9 years old. I get it from my dad. She hugged him tightly. Can we have pancakes? Absolutely. Marcus stood, carrying her to the kitchen. Chocolate chips or blueberries? Both. It's been a weird night. They made pancakes together, flour dusting the counters, Emma giggling when Marcus flipped one too enthusiastically and it stuck to the ceiling. Normal domestic chaos, the kind of ordinary magic that made everything else worth surviving. At 8:43 a.m., Marcus dropped Emma at school. No bomb scares today, just teachers and students beginning another Wednesday. He watched her join friends on the playground, animated conversation about something that mattered intensely in the way only third-grade drama could. She turned, waved at him. He waved back. And for the first time in 10 years, Marcus felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Not hiding from his past, not running from his skills, but integrating everything he'd been into something that served the people who mattered most. FBI headquarters was downtown, concrete building that looked like every other government facility. Marcus met Sarah and David in the lobby. They'd been summoned separately for their own statements, but coordinated arrival timing to present unified front. Ready to become official witnesses to federal crimes? Sarah asked with wry humor. Ready to finish what we started, Marcus corrected. They spent 4 hours in separate rooms detailing everything. The breach discovery, the Arlington operation, the evidence compilation. FBI agents took comprehensive notes, recorded statements, asked the same questions from different angles to check consistency. At 1:14 p.m., Morrison appeared with news. Thornton turned himself in 30 minutes ago, walked into FBI field office in Richmond, handed over his devices, provided written confession. He's requesting to speak with you. Marcus sat across from James Thornton in a secured interview room, 2 FBI agents observing from the corner. Thornton looked older than his 62 years, hair fully white, lines carved deep around his eyes. But his gaze stayed sharp, assessing Marcus with the same intensity he'd used teaching surveillance techniques a decade ago. You look good, Thornton spoke first. Fatherhood suits you better than fieldwork did. Fieldwork suited me fine, I just found something that mattered more. Marcus kept his posture relaxed, non-threatening. Why did you want to see me? Because you're the only person who'll understand what I'm about to say. Thornton leaned forward slightly. I was wrong. About Cooper. About the operation. About prioritizing assets over team. I convinced myself the mathematics justified it. Save 5 sources by sacrificing 1 operative. But mathematics can't account for what losing Cooper did to the people who loved him. Marcus absorbed this, the apology he'd needed for 12 years arriving when he'd stopped expecting it. Thank you for saying that. I'm also sorry for putting Emma in danger. Even theoretical danger, even misdirection. Children should be sacred ground in our world. Thornton's voice roughened. I had a daughter once. She died in a car accident while I was overseas on operation. I wasn't there. Chose the mission over being home. That's the real reason I protected assets so fiercely. Couldn't save my own child, so I saved other people's intelligence sources instead. The confession landed between them. Shared grief creating unexpected understanding. Marcus felt his anger dissipating, replaced by something sadder and more complicated. I'm sorry about your daughter. Marcus meant it. That kind of loss changes everything. It does, which is why you did the right thing tonight, putting Emma first. The system tried to make you choose between family and duty. You rejected the premise of that choice entirely. Thornton smiled slightly. I taught you better than I knew. You taught me to think strategically. Emma taught me what's worth protecting. Marcus paused. What happens now? I plead guilty, cooperate fully with prosecution, probably 15 to 20 years federal prison. Thornton stated it matter-of-factly. But Foster goes down too, and the corruption gets exposed. That's worth the price. Marcus nodded slowly. For what it's worth, you were a good teacher, even when the lessons were hard. And you were my best student, even when you had to correct my mistakes. Thornton extended his hand across the table. Thank you for finishing what I started, for doing it better than I could have. Marcus shook his hand, closure settling like dust after explosion. They'd both been shaped by broken systems and impossible choices. Both tried to navigate moral complexity with imperfect tools. In the end, they'd found different answers to the same question. When the system fails, do you burn it down or try to fix it from inside? Marcus had chosen both, burned the corruption, fixed what remained. Somehow that felt right. He left FBI headquarters at 4:30 p.m., drove through afternoon traffic back toward Emma's school. The day felt impossibly long, morning's crisis already distant despite being less than 24 hours past. His phone showed missed calls from reporters, texts from colleagues, emails from government officials wanting statements. All of it could wait. Emma's dismissal bell rang in 7 minutes, and Marcus had promised pancakes for dinner. Sometimes the most important thing you could do was show up exactly when you said you would.